It's all based in real world events. It's all fictional, but these are all things that could happen, sometimes have happened. We're very sensitive to things that have become too topical and might be dangerous. We definitely discuss when things are parallel to the real world, but it's not usually a problem. The scene with the Russian mercenary, who's clearly based on a real person who's now passed away, may be hitting wrong now that he's been killed. We're very aware of the real world link ups and conscious of them and sensitive to them.
Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by editor Gary Levy, whose work includes The Sinner, Tokyo Vice, The Office, and more recently, The Diplomat for Netflix. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
I guess, my first question for you is, how did you get involved with The Diplomat?
Um, the post exec at Netflix had worked with me. She was a post supervisor here in New York for a long time, Antonia Ellis. And she was the post exec, is the post exec at Netflix. And she introduced me to Deborah Kahn, and that was it.
Now, when I watched the show, I'm wondering, it's a very tight show. Like it feels like it's everything's on the page in the script. But I'm wondering, particularly like I think about the last episode of season two, like were there changes to it? Like what changed from script to screen in the editing room?
Well, there's always many changes from the script. Mostly lines that get trimmed out. I'm trying to think in that particular episode was we don't lose a lot of scenes. I don't think we lost any in that episode, but it's not usual that we'll lose a whole scene. But we do a lot of line cutting when we realize that we don't need as much as we think we do.
Mhm. And I guess because you come from like you worked on network shows and what have you, so there's more of a freedom now with Netflix where it's like there's no you have to lock into 22 or
Yeah, there's no set time that these episodes have to be, but
Mhm.
there is, and this is true with all of TV, even when it doesn't seem have a clock. Everyone seems to have an inner clock. So when this show gets into the mid 50s, there's just some sense that this feels long.
Yeah.
But there's no clock,
Yeah.
and if the show really wants to be whatever it is, um, it can be. But they end up in the usually end up in the mid 40s to the mid 50s.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
Well, and I think this episode was like the final episode was 43, I think, or something like that.
Was it that short?
Yeah, I think
We,
I
we did a
might
lot of trimming then.
be. One of the things I noticed in there was this there's sort of particularly between Kate and Hal and Kate and Stewart, there's this sort of interesting like she's very serious and there's a lot of serious stuff happening, and then there's these moments that the actor sort of gives us of that are kind of humorous. Like I think about at the start of the episode where she just keeps swearing because she's
Yeah,
discovered the thing about Scotland, or
yeah,
like like telling Stuart to sit beside her,
right.
patting the seat. So I'm wondering, like, in terms of editing and getting that balance of like the seriousness of the situations, but also giving us that humor to relieve things. Like, how do you find that balance?
Well, I mean, it's what I love to do, and I think it's why they were interested me in the first place, because I have a strong comedy background, and the script doesn't always read funny. Like those two instances that you just brought up, if you read the script, you wouldn't immediately see a joke. But to have a sense of where the humor is and to allow it to exist and to look for takes that aren't that are a little not quite so on the nose, but sort of awkward in different ways, playing with timing. So it's just a lot of fun. And as you get to know the characters, editing, you get more and more adept at picking out moments that you feel are going to read in a humorous way. Because sometimes the most obvious take or joke isn't when you cut it in, it looks like we're trying too hard. And it's more of a quirkiness about it that we look for.
Well, that was what was so fascinating about it is because like I said, when she's swearing on the like you said on the
Right.
page,
You wouldn't read that as
it would
funny,
sound
but
angry,
but
right?
when it's directed, Alex did a great job directing it, and Carrie is wonderful, and it's just very funny.
In something like that, did they, to I guess to protect themselves, would they do a take that's serious and then try and shift, or did you get like was it on set they were like, yeah, this is the direction we're going?
Um, that varies with actor to actor and director to director. Our main director, Alex Graves, is pretty confident in what he wants, so there's less variation. We do have other wonderful directors that are much more thinking of stuff on the fly as they go and changing things, and you'll get that a lot more. You'll Liza Johnson, who directed 5 and 6 of season 1 and 2 episodes this year, who's fantastic. Like every take feels very different because
Hmm.
she's coming up with stuff. Um, usually, usually we know what we want and we refine it as we go, but it's not major changes. And it also varies actor to actor. Um, Carrie is very consistent, and if if she's going to do something drastically different, it's discussed in
Hmm.
between takes, and she makes a clear change. Other actors are just naturally more i- improvisational about what they do, like Rufus um, and Allison.
Now, one of the things I would love to know, you get all the footage in when you're cutting the show, like how do you like to approach your first cut? Because I know that usually the first cut follows the script really tightly, so that the director can see it. But I'm wondering, like, how do you like to sort of tackle things? I know some editors like to put everything on the timeline and sort of chip it down. Others want to focus on particular scenes. Like, what's your approach?
Well, everything goes on the timeline unless I just have a big problem with it for some reason. But even then, everything goes on the timeline. I think it would be insulting for me not to show the director what he shot.
Hmm.
And often things that I think have no place being in the show, I'm wrong about, and they do have a place. I just don't quite understand how to put it together yet. So there's really no point in removing stuff out of the time, out
Yeah.
of the show at the assembly stage. Um, you've got to see everything. Given that constraint, given that I'm cutting stuff in that probably isn't going to make it, and I can sense that, I do try to make the show as tight as possible. It's not fluffy. It's
Hmm.
not it. I try to give a sense of how it will play in terms of pace, in terms of music, sound. I try to make it a longer version of itself so that when we get in there and do the work is about a lot of it's about taking beats out that I've put in. It's just I put in way too many beats, but they're all playing pretty tightly and pretty well.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career. Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
Now, I have a question, and I'm not sure I might even not ask it properly, but when I look at the series, it's a lot of discussion and dialogue scenes, right? It's a lot like dialogue scene after dialogue scene. And I'm wondering how you as an editor, when you're approaching a dialogue scene, find the tension in it and sort of bring that out for us to see.
In a dialogue scene in particular,
Yeah, because I think about especially the episodes when I'm watching it, it's like we're watching it and there is a sense of like tension or there is a sense of relief, and I'm wondering how you sort of go pulling that out when it's back-to-back dialogue scenes.
well, I think you can call these dialogue scenes, but the key to each scene is the emotion behind it. This isn't so I think in each scene you're looking for the character's emotional arc of that scene and what is the bond between all the people in the scene and where are the connections between them. You're looking in a very micro way at each individual moment, trying to make that as strong as possible. And then you gradually, over the course of the edit, pull back and get more of a macro view from looking at each line to looking at a 30-second to looking at the whole scene to looking at the whole. And you're whether it's a dialogue scene or an action scene or you're just building. You're building juxtapositions between people. You're building moments. You're building beats, and that's what holds it together.
There are sort of references to real world events and what have you. So like the Scottish independence movement and what have you. Is there a discussion in the cutting room about sort of working with that and sort of respecting the actual events, but also, bringing in these elements for the story to actually work? Like, what is the discussion around those things?
Well, it's all based in real world events. It's all fictional, but these are all things that mostly could happen, sometimes have happened. We're very sensitive to things that have become too topical and might be dangerous. This came up a lot as we were airing like a week before the election last year. But we definitely discuss when things are parallel to the real world, but it's not usually a problem. But every now and then we might say, oh, this scene with the Russian mercenary who's clearly based on a real person who's now passed away. Maybe it's hitting wrong now that he's been killed for real. So what we do about it, I'm not sure, but we're very aware of the real world link ups and conscious of them and sensitive to them.
Now, each episode sort of has a cliffhanger at the end, and then of course at the end of season 2 there's a big cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, I've talked to some people who've worked on shows with cliffhangers and secretive sort of elements, and in some cases they're given all the scripts so they can know what's going on. In other cases, the showrunners want to keep it out so that they can sort of build things and work things. How much did you know how much do you know going into these episodes? Like, do you just get the episode script, or do you get all the seasons scripts? Like, how does that work?
Um, we get the scripts fairly, like we get the scripts, each script like a month before it's shooting, sometimes not that long, sometimes 2 weeks, a week. We usually have an outline of each episode so we know where it's heading. With the finale, they keep it under wraps as long as they can. So even though we get an outline, some things are X'd out and only the top brass know what's behind those X's,
Mhm.
the redactions. But generally we'll have it well before they start shooting.
Is there a particular scene or moment in the series that you're like, oh, this was the greatest thing to cut today? You know, like, you know how you get those moments where you're like, ah, what a great day. I just got to cut this amazing performance.
Well, honestly, not to be too corny, but I feel like I get that all the time. I feel I am so incredibly lucky to be dealing with just solid, really
Mhm.
solid, good performances. And I'm always picking from good choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes that makes it hard because you don't want to let go of good choices when you kind of need to, because the story is off. But it's such a relief to me to be dealing with brilliant acting all throughout. Um, there are definitely scenes um, I'm trying to think in the finale, like what would be my favorite scene, um, where I just think the performances are beautiful. Um, I would say the two-hander at the end between Grace and Kate. I mean, they're just on it when they're having that argument in on the lawn right before the very end. It's just wonderful material. Um, and the material they gave was quite varied from a reasonable conversation to an all-out fight. And it all worked. It was all fantastic. And I got the privilege of trying to shape it into an arc that started out small and built.
Mhm.
And they gave me so much on the edges of that. Like I could go too far, I could go too little, and I got to pick, and that was wonderful.
Wow. So in those performances, it's like you had sort of like a normal, like you said, a conversation up to an argument. And how much did you work with the director and the showrunner to sort of create it the way it is? And how much did you put in? Like, did a lot of what you put in stay at from the initial cut, or did
Yeah,
it?
a lot of what I put in stays. Obviously, the director knows what he wants, and so there's a give and take all around. I put in what I think it is. The director comes in, he puts in what his um, goal was, and then Deb comes in, Deborah Kahn, our showrunner, and has final say on where it goes. Ultimately, it's it's a combination of my input, a lot of Alex's input, and a lot of Deb's input.
Now, I have one last question for you that I ask everyone. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
So right now I'm really enjoying Hacks.
Oh my gosh,
Enjoy,
it's a great
I'm
show.
enjoying that a lot.
Yeah. How do you like the new season?
It's great. I love the new season. Um, a few months ago, I finally caught up with the show Silo. I love science fiction. So I kind of watched that, like binged it all at
Yeah.
once. I'm kind of calling that a guilty pleasure because of the way I just sort of watched it on a rainy weekend, just totally absorbed. Um,
As a sci-fi fan, is there a show or a movie we should check out that not many people might be aware of?
in the sci-fi world,
Yeah.
oh, there's so many, but um, I love The Last of Us. Is that sci-fi or is that
No,
apocalypse? I'm not
I'll say
sure.
it might be
Um,
apocalyptic.
but there's so many. I can't think of one, right? You know, we just started watching Andor, which we had not watched. I'm enjoying that.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And that's it for our show this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.